Hey everyone, how's it going? I haven't been out in the shop lately because I've been fighting a cold, but I wanted to put out a video and show you guys how I make these rod leashes for my kayak. I really enjoy kayak fishing, and one thing that I'm always afraid of is losing a rod or a fish finder or anything out of my kayak set of pliers. And I make these rod leashes in different variations, and I thought I'd take the time to show you how I make them. So stick around. Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a little bit of a different format going here. I've been fighting a cold for the past few days, so I haven't really been outside in the shop doing any work. But I thought I'd take some time here and do a video to show you how I make my rod lanyards for my kayak. So if you go kayak fishing, if you flip whatever's not tied down, it's going to end up at the bottom of the lake. So you want to have it tied on. I've got three different styles here that I make. I have this one here, which has two loops at the ends, and it gives me options for what I want, how I want to connect it to the boat and to the rod. I picked up these carabiners, a big pack of carabiners, so you can use one of these and clip it onto the loop and use that to clip it onto the kayak anywhere. I also have another one here that I did that I like. It's a little bit smaller of a connector, and this one here, it's just a small clip, but it has to be set up with this clip on. You can't add this on after it's done. You got to do it while you're making it. And the other one is I 3D printed one of these cord locks, I think is what it's called, and you can put your rod in there and then just cinch it down, and then that just tightens up around the rod, and we'll hold it nice and snug, and it won't come off until you depress this button here, and then you can pull out the slack. So they work really well, and they're super easy to make. They're made with shock cord, or bungee cord, I guess some people would call it, and I got a really good deal at my local flea market. They had this this spool of shock cord that kind of came unwound. The one end popped off, so I was able to get this huge spool for $5. I think it was $4 or $5. They just wanted to get rid of it just because it was too much of a hassle to untangle it whenever somebody wanted to buy something. So anyways, I'm rambling. Alright, so to make these rod leashes, the first thing you're going to need is some shock cord, like I have here, and it's just bungee cord, and usually I make them about 40 inches long. You can make them any length you want. For me, I find 40 inches works pretty good, so I'm just going to cut off a piece here. I'm just off camera, but I'm just going to cut off a piece here, roughly 40 inches. There we go, it's done. Alright, so the first thing you want to do, I'll show you what we need. So we need a piece of bungee cord or shock cord. We need some UV resistant polyester thread. So this is 100% polyester. It's outdoor grade UV resistant. So you're going to need some of that. You're going to need a sewing needle as well. You're going to need a lighter. You're going to need some shrink tubing. I use a 1/4 inch shrink tubing. You're going to need a set of pliers to help pull the needle through. And you're going to need some connectors, either some carabiners or these quick clips if you want to use these quick clips. And I'll leave a link down in the description below to all of these components. So carabiner or a quick clip, depending on how you want to make yours. That's it. So let's get working. So the first thing you want to do is I like to pull off about an arm's length of this this thread, and what I'm doing here is I'm going to be sewing the loops on. A lot of people, they'll just crimp them on, tie them on. I find sewing it on gives us a stronger connection, and overall I find it looks nicer. So I'm just going to get my thread ready. Okay, so I got my needle and thread ready. Now I cut the shock cord, so what I want to do is just singe the end, just to burn off any loose threads in the shock cord. There you go. Alright, so what I'm going to do is figure out the length of the loop. I like my loops to be roughly about 1.25 inches long. And I mean the material that I fold over, sorry. So if you can see here, I like it to be about 1.25 inches long, folded over. So then when I sew this down, I have about a 1/2 inch loop, and that gives me plenty of space to pop in one of these carabiners in there. So what I'll do is, now that I have that measured, I just got to start sewing. So I'll start by sticking the needle in the end. And what I like to do, don't do this if you have a nice wooden table, because it'll leave marks on the table. So I just press down to get the needle through, get it started. Then I use a pair of pliers just to grab a hold of the needle, and don't use a super high quality needle. Alright, so now I pulled the thread all the way through. Now I fold it back over to roughly where I wanted it, so it's about 1.25 inches or so roughly. So I just want to hold on, make a mark where I want that needle to go through, and you want to try to keep the needle going through the center of the shock cord. So I'm going to start pushing it through slowly. And you can use your fingers to push it through, but I ended up sticking the needle through my thumb doing it a while ago, so that's why I started using these pliers to pull it through. And as you're pulling it through, keep your fingers on the inside loop of the thread. That way it'll keep it from tangling as it's getting pulled through. And you'll see here it'll slowly get pulled through and close. Once you have that first initial loop done, I squeeze it down, and then I just repeat it. Put the needle through the center, push it on the table just a bit, just for the needle to pop through the end, and then again grab the thread, and then as you pull the needle through, hold on to the thread just so it doesn't get all tangled up, all knotted up as it goes through. And then you can ease it through as it gets tied up. So then on the back side, you don't have a bunch of loops there. It's all nice and tight. So you just keep doing that until you get to a point where the loop that is open is the size that you want to have. Like I mentioned, I like to have a 1/2 inch loop. So that should be pretty close. Might be a bit closer to 5/8 than 1/2 inch, but that's fine. And you can make this loop however long you want. Now I have a bunch of extra thread left over. What I do to further secure is I start wrapping the thread really, really tight, starting from the tip and working my way back towards the end here. So usually what I do is I do about 8 wraps or so. Then I'll take the needle, and then I'll stick it back through again, like we did before to sew it. And that'll help to lock the thread in place. So once that's pulled through, we'll do another 8 wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you want to pull these nice and tight. You don't want these to be loose. This is what's going to help hold this into place so it won't slip. Is this overkill? Most definitely. But you know what? In the end, it'll look nice and it'll hold. And with the price of fishing rods nowadays, you don't want to end up having your rod at the bottom of the lake. There. Another 8 wraps. Roughly. 8, 10, 5, whatever you're comfortable with. I find 8's alright. Does it make a difference? Probably not, but that's what I go with. Alright, so we're getting close to the end. I'm running out of thread, so I'll just wrap up whatever I have left and then pass it through one last time. And then once that's done, with the excess thread here, what I like to do is just take it and feed it through the side here. Just feed it underneath the other threads, and then it'll pop out on the other end, like you can see there, and that'll lock the loose end into place. So we pull that in, and once that's there, we just snip off the excess thread, and there you go. So that's nice and clean. I'll just melt off the end here. So there's the end, and we're going to go one step further and use a 1/4 inch heat shrink tubing, and I'm going to measure it roughly to the a little bit longer than the eyelet. So I want it to stick out. So usually I like to have the beginning of my heat shrink tubing somewhere at the beginning of the loop, and then the end a little bit further than the end that we cut. So then I take this here and then feed it through the heat shrink tubing. You could also put in the heat shrink tubing first, but I didn't find a difference. It goes in fine after, especially if you really squeeze down those wraps. The heat shrink tubing will feed real easy onto it. So then what I do is I pull it all the way through, and then I just slide it back just till I get to the point where I like to have it, which is right about there. So we have the threads a bit further back, and I just slide it on just a bit further. And then once that's done, take the lighter and just shrink the tubing down. You don't want to be on there too long. You don't want to melt your shock cord, cause any damage to it. We just want to shrink the heat shrink tubing. And there we go. So we have an end for our rod leash for the kayak. So I'll go ahead and do the other end quickly. One thing I'm doing with this second loop is I'm going to go a lot further than I did with the first one. The first one has about a 1/2 inch, roughly a 1/2 inch hole where the eyelet is. This one here, I'm going to almost close it up completely, and I'll show you soon why I'm doing that. But it's I find it's important if you're going to just loop the shock cord around your rod and pass it back through itself. Alright, so I finished up the other end here, and like you can see, the hole in the second one that I made is a lot smaller than the hole in the first one. And the reason why I do that is because when I use this style of rod leash on my fishing rod, I'll wrap this end between the reel seat and the first eyelet, so I'll wrap it around the rod, and then this piece here will go through this eyelet. And I want it to be snug, so what I'll do is I'll stretch it out here to allow this piece to go through. And when I wrap it around the rod and cinch it down, I want this to cinch down snug. So if I wrap it around the rod, I want it to be able to hold its shape. If it's too loose, well, while you're fishing, this is going to open up. It's not going to it's not going to cause you to lose your rod, because if your rod falls down, it will snug up. But by having a smaller hole, it's tighter around it, and it's going to want to stay there where you place it. So it tends to be a lot less cumbersome. It's less in the way that way. So there we go. So we have this loop here that goes between the rod seat and the first eyelet. And then we have the second eyelet here that I usually hook up a carabiner to. And then this, I'll clip it onto any pad eye on the kayak. And you can also clip on multiple rod leashes on one carabiner. So that's it. It's just that easy. Thanks a lot for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. It helps to grow my channel. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of any of my upcoming videos. And if you know somebody who might benefit from my content, please share my videos and channel with them. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're interested in making your own rod and equipment leashes, I'll leave a link to all the items you need in the description below. We'll see you on the next one.